All right, today we're jumping into a conflict that you might not hear about as much as Caesar's Gallic Wars, but one that honestly pushed the Roman Republic right to the very edge of total collapse. We're talking about the Cimbrian War.
So how did this all kick off? Well, it starts back in 113 BC. You have this Roman consul, a guy named Carbo, who's looking to make a name for himself, get some easy glory. He decides to ambush a whole migrating people from the north. But his little plan backfires. Big time. The Cimbri got a warning, turned the tables on him, and just like that, a decade of absolute terror for Rome had begun.
And yeah, Carbo's shocking defeat? That was just the beginning. It was the first domino to fall. Rome was about to get hit with a string of catastrophic losses that would shake its foundations and make it question its own invincibility.
I mean, look at this. For years, pretty much every single army Rome sent north just got wiped off the map. These weren't just close calls, they were total annihilations. And what's really crazy is that it wasn't just because the enemy was tough. A lot of it came down to the pure arrogance, greed, and frankly, incompetence of Rome's own noble commanders.
And this whole crisis hits its absolute low point at the Battle of Vercellae. Picture this. Two massive Roman armies are on the field, right next to each other, but they refuse to cooperate. Can you believe it? And why? Because the junior commander, this aristocrat named Caepio, hated his boss Marius simply because Marius was a new man who didn't come from a fancy noble family.
So what happens because of this petty aristocratic nonsense? The single worst military disaster in Roman history. With the armies totally uncoordinated, the Cimbri and Teutones just rolled them up one by one. 80,000 soldiers dead. That's a number that dwarfs even the legendary catastrophic defeat at Cannae.
When the news of Vercellae gets back to Rome, it's just absolute panic. The city is basically defenseless. People were so terrified that they went back to this ancient, horrifying ritual of human sacrifice. Meanwhile, out on the battlefield, the victorious tribes were having their own chilling ceremonies, hanging Roman prisoners from trees and dedicating all the loot to their gods.
So, the Republic is on the brink of annihilation. Its traditional aristocratic leaders have failed completely, spectacularly. In their terror, who did the people turn to? They turned to an outsider, a controversial but brilliant general named Gaius Marius.
Now, Marius was what they called a novus homo, a new man. Basically, he was an upstart, a military genius for sure, but he didn't have that ancient family name like the guys who had just led Rome to ruin. The elites, they hated him for it, but the regular people, they saw him as their only shot.
This is how scared the Roman people were. They completely shattered their own political rules. They elected Marius consul again and again and again, even while he was out of the city with the army, which was totally illegal. They basically pinned all of their hopes for survival on this one guy. Okay, so what does Marius do? He completely rebuilds the Roman army from the ground up. First, he throws out the old property requirements and lets the poorest citizens enlist. This creates a professional army that's loyal to him. Second, he brings in gladiator trainers to make his new recruits brutally tough. And finally, he gets rid of the slow baggage trains, making every soldier carry his own gear. They became known as Marius's mules, a fast, tough, self-sufficient fighting machine.
All right, so after years of this intense, brutal training, Marius finally marches his new legions north. First target on the list? The Teutones and their allies. It was finally time for Rome to get some payback.
You gotta remember, the Teutones were riding high. After years of just crushing Roman armies, they felt unstoppable. They literally marched past Marius's camp for days, shouting insults, taunting the Romans. But Marius was a master of discipline. He wouldn't bite. He forced his men to sit there on their hilltop and take it, waiting for the perfect moment. And here's where his genius comes into play. He lets a small fight over water escalate, which lures one of the tribes, the Ambrones, into a sloppy, disorganized attack. And then he unleashes his legions. As the main Teuton army starts charging uphill into his disciplined lines, a hidden force of Roman cavalry slams into them from behind. It was a perfect, beautifully executed trap.
The end of the battle was just horrifyingly brutal. The Teuton force wasn't just beaten, it was exterminated. The fighting got so desperate that, according to the sources, the tribe's women fought back with axes and knives before taking their own lives and their children's to avoid being taken as slaves.
So, with the Teutones completely wiped out, Marius turns his full attention to the Cimbri. These were the guys who started it all, the ones responsible for the disaster at Vercellae. This was it. One final, decisive battle to end the war. Before a single sword was drawn, Marius started playing mind games. Ambassadors from the Cimbri show up demanding land for their allies, the Teutones. In response, Marius just parades the captured Teuton chiefs in front of them in chains and coldly tells them that their allies already have all the land they'll ever need. The message was unmistakable, and it had to have shattered their morale.
At the Battle of Vercellae itself, you can just see Marius's tactical genius on full display. He sets up his army so the Cimbri have to charge right into the blinding morning sun and huge clouds of dust kicked up by the fighting. The Cimbri cavalry panics, gets confused, and crashes right back into their own infantry. As their whole formation just collapses into a chaotic mess, Marius's disciplined legions simply move in and take them apart, piece by piece.
The result? Well, you can see for yourself. It was another staggering, completely one-sided slaughter. The Cimbri weren't just defeated. As a people, they were basically erased from history in a single afternoon. The threat that had haunted Rome for more than a decade was finally, brutally, over.
So Marius returns to Rome as the ultimate hero. They hail him as the third founder of Rome for saving the Republic from certain destruction. But his victory came at a profound and unforeseen cost to the Republic itself.
And this right here, this is the crucial point. The reforms that saved Rome also planted the seeds of its destruction. See, Marius's new soldiers were poor, landless guys. Their loyalty wasn't to the Senate in Rome, which offered them nothing. It was to their general, the man who promised them pay, loot, and a plot of land when they retired. For the first time, an army's loyalty shifted from the state to one powerful man.
And that is the ultimate paradox of the Cimbrian War. By creating this new kind of army, an army loyal to men instead of the state, Marius basically forged the perfect weapon that future generals, guys named Sulla, Pompey, and of course Caesar, would use to tear the Republic apart. So that leaves us with this final, lingering question. In saving the Republic, did Marius also create the very tool that would one day destroy it?